This is Loyota Review. We're going over the Season 14 Assassin item changes. And I'm going to do a little tier list while working this through. So, let's get straight into it. So we have the new Assassin items. And there's a bunch of epic items they've added that are going to be built up into the legendary items that they have changed. So, the first one we should look at, the Retrix. So this is 20 AD and 4% movement speed, and it builds into two of the new items that we'll go over later. 20 AD and 4% movement speed is like fine. It's not. You typically don't care so much about building movement speed, especially in a sense that like you don't care about movement speed in the beginning of the game. When you can get lethality, like you just want the damage to one shot. So I can't imagine this item being an ideal like base item to grab early on. Serrated Dirk is 100 gold cheaper, and this is quite good now. Like the fact that it's 100 gold cheaper means that you can get it after your full clear. And like just like playing around a little bit from as a jungler, and then of course, as a mid laner, just having a quicker base, always great. To like get serrated Dirk if you just don't have enough gold, sometimes even top lane for certain picks. Also great. Of course, there's no Dustblade, which a lot of top laners would go, so that's kind of, we'll push that to a side, but good change. The Tunneler, this goes into, I believe, what? 2 items I'm going to go over? Yeah, 2 items I'm going to go over. It is all right. I mean, it's like 1580, 250 HP. It's like, it's okay. Nothing incredible. You're never rushing this item ever, or building this. Like, you don't really want to build this basically in your first 2 item sets as an assassin. Next, we got the Brutalizer. It is the same amount of AD, and it's 2 less lethality than the Serrated Dirk, while being 337 more gold. So again, items that build out Serrated Dirk are gonna have a higher like preference compared to Brutalizer. That's just from how I see it, at least right now, because like you could get 25 AD plus 10 more AD from a longsword. Yes, it's a little bit more gold than 337, but who cares? I'm sure you would have it if you could get that alone, and that's great. It has 10 ability haste, so it is a little bit different, and I'm not 100% sure if that actually matters so much, at least in terms of getting your first completed item as an assassin, like your first like tier 2 item. So we'll see. But yeah, it's not like my preference to rush this item in the beginning of the game. And then we have Last Whisper, which is basically the same. So if I were to go into this in the beginning, what do we got here? Into the beginning, we have this, which just feels absolutely shit for assassins. Don't really care for it. You have Serrated Dirk, which is amazing. We have Brutalizer, which is probably like an A or B, nothing too crazy. And then this item is like a B level. That's kind of like how I would go with these base, like these epic items for now. Serrated Dirk, awesome. Brutalizer, pretty good. Next up, so we have the Serpent's Fang. It's the same item. Good AD, good lethality. Obviously, it plays into shields. We'll have to figure out if there's other items that, give shields at this point, like if that's really the case. I don't believe there's a Moonstone-like item. I know there's like this item that gives a shield, and like, but that's for magic damage, doesn't really matter. So I'm not sure how prevalent the passive is going to be, but, the general stats are good. This 50 AD, 15 lethality, 15 ability haste, and all for 2,600 gold. And the components, and keep in mind, this is a big thing. You need to look at the components that you're building into. So you have to get a pickaxe and a Serrated Dirk. Serrated Dirk's in it, sick, really good, right? Serrated Dirk, and then a hammer. And the hammer's components has this new thing that's only 250 gold, which is the glowing moat. Really easy to buy. You love buying all these items in Assassin. And of course, Blackout is an insane like passive to have, so that's pretty good. That's actually rather good. And then we get into Ghostblade, which is there's only 2 more, there's a few more, but we'll go over these 2 and then add them. There's Ghostblade, which has 60 AD. It's less gold, because obviously it's not a mythic anymore. But it also does not give you the increased lethality when first damaging a champion after, like, being out of combat. And that is kind of shit. Like, the reason why Ghostblade is currently OP, why like Graves came back, other AD champions got nerfed. And then at the same time, they introduced Ghostblade, nice buff. Now we see Graves popping up more, and he's kind of like OP as a solo queue jungler, and I've seen it in combines doing really well. And so it doesn't have any added damage. It doesn't have any ability haste. It's just some movement speed and then damage, which, to be honest, is kind of whatever. Like, the item doesn't feel as enjoyable to build now, even because like this is great. This is like okay, but I don't know. It's okay. Then you have Edge of Night, which it has the Tunneler again. Not your favorite. Sweet, it has Serrated Dirk, but it's basically the same thing except it has this, and it's okay. Like, it's all right. So if I were to go into this, for Ghostblade, I mean, this is obviously situational. This item will always be situational. It's not like the best item to just build as is. This item is still way up there. It has all the stats you really want. And this item is like, ideally you would say this is situational, but it also is cheap and has good stats. Honestly, I would put it between like these two. I wonder if I would put this at C. Honestly, I might even put this at C because I just don't see a world where this is like actually that enjoyable to build or want to build. Maybe the only thing is because the map is bigger, that's why you want to take it more. But that's going to be like a lot of predictions. So we have Opportunity, which is one of the new items. And this item actually inherits the Ghostblade active, where you have increased lethality after being off combat and going into combat with a champion. Now, this goes from 5 to 10. So you can imagine this is 2,700 gold. This is the same amount of gold as, Ghostblade. It gives you base 5% movement speed. Now, I'm just going to say right now, the 5% movement speed is less than 40 flat, but this is only for out of combat, and then it has an active, right? So this generally will be better in combat, just because you don't have to depend on a proc, like the active. And then to top it off, so you have increased damage, so 5 less AD, but you get more lethality compared to Ghostblade. If you kill a champion within those, like, for 3 seconds of damaging them, so you one-shot them, you get a huge burst of MS, like 50 decaying MS. And that's amazing. Like, as far as I know, this doesn't say anything about there being an internal CD on that. So if this is like if this is unique per champ, that's pretty damn awesome. Because you can imagine, I can't imagine it stacks. If it stacks, then it's even crazier, because you've seen talents kill like 2 or 3 people if they're clumped, and then you would just have, you'd be zooming. But the reason why I say it could possibly stack is because Riot let Jinx have infinite stacks with her passive recently, and that was pretty ridiculous. But the item for 2,700 gold, giving you a really nice getaway when getting a kill. You have increased damage, which is perfect because, you just want to one-shot it as an assassin. That meets a lot of a lot of your goals. The next that they have is the Cyclosword. This is the first time we're witnessing that has the Brutalizer, which again is not like exactly, it's okay, but you have to get a pickaxe and this feels, if you can't full buy this and you have to buy the components, that feels pretty shit. And this item's pretty worthless for an assassin to rush. So components wise, not happy. But when you complete the item, it gives you ability haste, which you want. It gives you lethality, which you want. It gives you 50 AD, which you want. It's 2,900 gold, so it's not like the most expensive thing. And it gives you a really nice energized attack that gives you a huge fat slow. Now this slow, it's for just a little less than a second. But we used to have an item like this before. If you went invisible or something like that, you would hit an enemy champ and then they would slow greatly. That has a lot of great uses for assassins. Like, so, if you're Zen, you go in and you auto attack them once, they're so slow, you will always be guaranteed to land all your shit. The fact it's also energized, it's not like an internal CD. You can kind of proc this more than once. and most assassins have the like dashes. And, if you have high MS, like you will get another energized attack, which is great for chasing. So this item completed is pretty good. This item building into it, not so much. Next, we have Hubris. So Hubris is interesting. I actually did a little testing just to make sure I was right. So this has 60 AD. So this has the same amount of AD as Ghostblade. For 300 more gold, you're getting 15 AD. Now, obviously, you don't get any movement speed, but the 15 AD, 15, sorry, not 80, 15 ability haste is really nice. The active is kind of weird. So it's like if you kill a champion, or like, you deal damage to a champion and then they so happen to die, regardless if you kill them or not, it's just a takedown. You will get additional flat AD for, 60 seconds. Now, at first when I was reading this, I was trying to figure out, like, is this saying that, I get 10 plus 1, so I get 11 like AD after one kill, and then it'll give me 10 plus 2, so it's like really, really snowbally? It's not. As far as I know, because based on this, I went into like a bot match, right? Killed 2 champs, or I killed 1 champ, I ran mid, killed another champ. It was at 12. So obviously it's just implying that, okay, you'll get, if you kill 3 champs, then you'll get 13. Like, not that crazy. It's like the active is okay. You're basically getting this mostly for the stats, and then the whatever the active is just a bonus. The components itself are amazing. I mean, this is what like components used to be built like prior, right? Was getting the Dirk and the Warhammer. So the components are amazing. But I'll be honest, the active is kind of a letdown. So I feel like this item mostly makes sense when you just have the gold later on. I don't think this is really a good rush item at all. Next up, we have the Arc. I think this has more ability haste than it did prior. Like if I went to this, no, it's the same. Okay, so it has the same ability haste. The main difference is, I believe, no, it's the same. So this didn't really change. Honestly, I because no one builds this item. I didn't remember that the ultimate percentage you got back was based on your lethality. So this is basically the same, no changes. It's just like these items here for the most part. Collector, I believe, has 5 more AD, unless that change was already added in. It has decent lethality. Pretty good item. You compare this to this, like, yeah, it's not half bad, right? I added this to the list, even though it's technically not lethality, just because I can imagine lethality champs building it. So it's Sundered Sky. Now, Sundered Sky, yeah, it has HP, it has like attack damage. I don't think this is exactly a good item to build as a bruiser, because a bruiser is not really going to build too much pen in the first place. So, even if you get like an initial hit, I don't think it really matters so much. But for lethality champs, you have so much pen, you have so much AD on that first hit. This does what? If you had like 400 AD, you gain an extra 200 damage at least from the crit. Pretty damn nice. Like, the heal is whatever. Honestly, I could care less about the heal. It is also interesting because if you kill the first champ and you move on to the next, you have another crit hit added to you. And maybe that's where the heal does come into play. Like, you're in a sling of like just like massacres, and that's where like it becomes important. And yeah, like I said, this is pretty interesting. It might be a luxury item though, only because some assassins do like building all damage, but you do need to usually fit in like 1 or 2 defensive items. And if that's what this is with the HP and that's enough, that's cool, but you might need to build something else. Then there's Grudge. And so the change with Grudge is basically that you get lethality. Your armor pen is based on your lethality. So you need to build more lethality items to build Grudge, which means that Grudge is not very good as a like second item. Like Aatroxes sometimes would build Grudge. Even if they went Gore, they might go Grudge. Usually it's like if they went Duskblade, they would go into Grudge. But if you don't go into more pen, you don't really get the same benefit as you did prior. And then also, of course, you only slow them when they're under a certain amount of HP. So it's even amplified more to be like, oh, by the way, like for Ezreal, for Aatrox, for other champs who like were kind of benefiting from just having this slow as is, it's kind of gone. Now, I will also say though, which is very interesting, it has flat lethality. And I want to be honest, I just said all that, and I don't think I even considered the fact that it has flat lethality, which is pretty freaking nice. Now, you usually want the 10 AD. You usually want the 10, like the extra AD, because it does make a big difference with like all your lethality that you're building. But this makes this item like particularly good, because then as assassin, you really didn't give a shit about the slow. Like, I think for Aatrox, for Ezreal, for these kinds of champs, this item becomes maybe not as interesting, but for pure assassins, this item is kind of amazing. It's pretty amazing, actually. Wow. I'm probably gonna put that higher than I imagined. And then finally we have Profane Hydra. So 60 AD. You know, this is the same slot as AD as Collector and Ghostblade, which, you know, that kind of sucks. Like, you're only getting 60 AD, but you're paying 3,400. It's the most expensive item. That kind of sucks. This has 70 AD, right? And now it has 18 lethality. Again, kind of the same with like some of these other items. And 20 ability haste, which is okay. Now, I've seen this active, using this active, and like when you have like 3-4 items, it's doing like up to 400 damage, which is insane. Like if they're under 30%. So as a finisher item, it's good. Tiamat, it's a pretty good first item. Brutalizer, not that happy. This is not a rush item. I thought at first when I saw it that it would be a rush item, but when I looked at the components more, and especially after I did rush it in one of my games, it's pretty whatever. Like, this is good for late game. This is not that good for later. And even in those cases, I felt like having Hydra, you know, 10 more AD, and then also just the lifesteal itself felt super nice. So I'm not sure where I am with this. Like, I really am not. I can definitely imagine, you know, the case of having like that fat added AoE damage as an assassin, especially if you can get hit like 2 targets, like it being good. But for now, it's okay. So if I were to go to this tier list at this point, you know, I feel like this item, it has really good components, but I just feel like it's just kind of whatever, you know. Like this item falls almost. This item's in a really weird state. Like, I put this here at S for sure. Grudge is at S because it has lethality built into it, which is insane already. For assassins, and it's built for assassins, and because they basically added lethality to it because it doesn't slow all the time, and that's a change you like. This item as well, it's like it's an A. It's a really good item, but it's just an A because the components are a little iffy. And I could put this at A or B, and I mean, it might even make me put this at C, to be honest. This item is situational. This item, of course, is situational as well. This is not an item I probably would actively look to take. And then this item is like, I like the components of it, though. That's the only thing. I might leave it at this. Honestly, this almost makes me want to move Ghostblade up to B, because it's only 2,700 gold for lethality and fat AD, which is rather nice. It's just that active is like okay, it kind of bleeds into this one. And the only reason why I have this one here is because, again, I'm not like the biggest like fan of this. I feel like you could do a lot better than this with this, though. If I were to put this item in like the tier list, I'd put this at A, because I feel like it's a lot of like good stats for cheap. And this has a ton of ability haste that you might honestly... Man, does this item actually move on up? Because it's one of the few items that has a ton of ability haste. Honestly, I wonder if this item becomes more core. with how they're building these items, this actually might be more of a core item. Especially because... Oh, but I hate Brutalizer. I hate building Brutalizer, though. I'll probably put it here. I think I'll leave it at this for now. And I'll make my judgments later. I think I probably would move this down and maybe even put this here. At least for now. And I'll leave it at that. Again, my reasoning being, if we look this over like this tier list, this is very clear. Like, these are the most obvious S tier items. Okay? Most obvious S tier items. Brutalizer and what is this called? Opportunity? Opportunity. Really good. You know, I could almost put this here, but again, it's just like, I really hate the components. I love the active and everything, but I hate the components. You know, this is a little bit similar where I feel like I don't necessarily love the components when building, but because it's a later item, it can land here. Ghostblade, you know, same thing. Like, not a huge fan. This is amazing. Not quite as good as this, but good. And then you hit Profane Hydra, and it's just... They're late game items, you know, they'll be good, but you're going to want to get this, you know. I think I'd be a lot happier having these kinds of items. And so that's my tier list, and that's my thoughts on the assassin items for Season 14.